Well, let me just say, David, thank you and Kent and for meeting with me in Washington, D.C. about a week ago. Lose track of the days. But and updating me on what's happening here. It's very exciting. I don't know, I always like to mention the fact my mom's from Robstown, so, have a local connection. Used to come down and visit my grandparents on a regular basis in Flower Bluff, of all places. And so I have a little bit of a connection to Corpus in this area. But what's happening here, not just affects the domestic economy, this really changes geopolitics. One of the reasons why Europe was caught by surprise when Putin invaded Ukraine is because they were almost entirely dependent on Russian energy. And that is changing some, but not fast enough. But it also means that since we're producing more, and I was just out in the Permian Basin yesterday, out at a field where I was watching some of the separation between the oil, the gas, and the water that comes out of the ground there, and of course then into the pipeline. And then, this has a worldwide impact, and it provides us another level of security for the United States because we're not entirely dependent on foreign sources for our energy supply, and that's a big deal. And there's limitless opportunity. Kent mentioned that this administration is not antagonistic toward fossil fuels and hydrocarbons, unlike the last administration, and I think it provides an incredible opportunity. President Trump talks about establishing energy dominance, and he is serious. And he has appointed some incredible people, Doug Burgum, the former governor of North Dakota, and Chris, Chris Wright, as Secretary of Energy. And so I think what you're doing here works very well with the agenda of the administration. And of course, I'm always happy to do everything I can to be of assistance to you. I'm excited about some of the stuff you're doing here in Corpus, including things like the desal project,
yes, sir,
which we talked about a little bit. And I know Governor Abbott has put water high on the agenda, maybe the top of the legislative agenda, because we are a growing state and putting more and more demands on limited water resources, and it takes too long to build reservoirs and things like that to supply the water that we all need. And frankly, when companies are looking at whether to move to Texas, that's one of the things they look at, is whether there's going to be adequate resources to supply their needs, whether it's energy or water or the like. So I'm happy to be back, and thank you for your friendship, and it's good to be back here in the port and get an update on all the exciting things that are going on.
Great. Well, we appreciate you being here. The one thing about Senator Cornyn is that he'll take your calls and he'll answer and he will respond, and that's what we really appreciate about what you do for us. Thank you. Okay, so moving right along, let's see here. I think we're going to go with Chenier first. Is that correct?
Sounds good.
Yeah, let's do.
All right.
Thank you.
Senator, just appreciate you being here and everything you've done to champion the region, this project. And then also thanks to the chairman and Kent for including us on this. But I'll give a high-level background on Chenier. Yesterday can talk about what's going on here locally, potential expansions that we're looking at, as we've been talking about. But Chenier is the largest producer of LNG in the United States, and we're the second largest operator globally. And that's just since beginning operations in 2016, essentially. We've exported nearly 4,000 cargoes from our two sites, and that includes nearly 1,100 from the site just across the bay here in Corpus Christi. And that's since 2018, that facility started up. So we account for about 10% of global LNG and 50%, so half of US LNG. So when we talk about US LNG, 50% of that is coming from our two facilities, including the one here in Corpus Christi. Each day, we purchase about 7.5 billion cubic feet of gas a day, which makes us the largest natural gas processor in the United States. We're buying that from about 60 to 70 producers across the country. moving that on about 25 different pipeline systems down to our 2 facilities where we are loading it on ships and exporting to 41 countries around the world. But one of the things that makes it possible to have had that amount of growth since 2016 in this industry is the importance of partners, whether it's our suppliers, our customers, or the port. And they've been a strategic partner for us for many years, supportive, focused on energy, like both the chairman and Kent said. And this project has been important to us, and Nisha will be able to talk more about it just in terms of operational flexibility and the amount of cargoes that we're able to bring in and out based on traffic, based on safety in this port. So it's been a very critical project for us. When we look at LNG demand globally in the LNG market, we're still expecting that to double by 2040. And so as we talk about the importance from a geopolitical perspective, Cheniere was the #1 supplier to Europe in 22, 23, and 24. And so we can talk about Texas gas that's coming from the Permian, where you were, that's being processed and loaded on ships in Corpus Christi, that is landing in Europe and is making that impact. So it's not a intangible item that Texas and the coastal bend is having that impact geopolitically. But when we look at the LNG market doubling by 2040, the need for new projects, and whether that's going to come from the U.S. or whether that's going to come from other places, and we've already referenced the new administration. When we talk about transparency, efficiency, and regulatory permitting, those are all things we're looking at as we look towards expansion projects, which Nisha will talk about. But I'll also just leave that with the importance of a forward-thinking partner like the port. When we, Kent talked about how long this project had, came to fruition, and already looking forward to, down the road, next projects that are going to support the customer base, support our growth. So this project's very important to that. Future projects are important to that. But I'll turn it over to Nisha to talk about.
Before you do, just to add to that, yesterday at our commission meeting, we approved about a $5 million, I think it was $5 million for a study to the La Quinta channels where Cheniere is located, which is an offshoot of the main channel. And we want to take it to 54 feet, and we want to widen it. And so we initiated a study to start working with the Corps to make that project happen. Hopefully sometime before 30 years from now.
So proactive looking forward.
Yes, we're moving forward. Thank you. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No problem. Thank you for having us here. Very nice to meet you for the first time, Senator Cornyn. Our CCL facility is quite an interesting one. So it is a third of our total size across Cheniere. So we run 3 ConocoPhillips designed trains, and we process about 15 million tons per annum of LNG through that facility. And with the expansion that we're doing, we'll also become the first facility in the world to have 2 different technologies to do the liquefaction at our facility. In fact, we took care custody control of our first of 7 new trains that are going to be coming along. So once we're done with these 7 trains, we will be up to about 25 to 28 million tons per annum out of here. And then just wanted to say thank you for your support on trains 8 and 9 that Secretary Chris Wray just approved during SEER Week. Thank you for the letter that you sent. That will get us to about 30 million tons per annum out of this facility. Right? So we're going to double in size over the next 5 years or so from where we are today. And our channel is critical infrastructure for us to be able to do that. If we're not able to egress our cargoes out, we have to shut in, right? Which means we shut in about 2.5% of the total U.S. gas that is being produced on a daily basis. So it's critical that we are able to load our ships and move them. The deepening and widening of the channel, the study that you guys just approved, that allows us to have 2-way traffic, right? So we'll be able to inbound and outbound ships simultaneously, which is a significant operational flexibility for us, and we'd appreciate that. But any change on the efficiency of the channel allows us to be more efficient on our side, right? And right now we do a LNG cargo ship every other day. By doubling in size, we're going to be doing 1 every day, right? So, and often when we have different schedules, we're wanting to move ships quite close to each other, so any improvement on the ship channel is critical for us. Okay. So yeah, we're doing very well. Almost all of our cargoes last year went directly to Europe. In the short term, we see Europe as our largest market, whether we're giving it to our foundational customers who bring it to Europe or whether we directly sell it to them. Over time, our ships will also go into Asia. They do still, but most of it directed to Europe, just so we can get them sustained and stable.
And the one thing I'll just add on to that before we turn back over, when we talk about the impact in Europe, and the initiative talked about being able to load a cargo a day or every other day, one cargo of LNG provides enough energy to provide heat for 1 million people for a month. So when we talk about, we've loaded 1,100 cargoes since 2018, when you multiply that out, the human impact that U.S. LNG and U.S. energy is having globally is astounding. Chairman?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Enbridge.
Senator, thanks for being here. Appreciate the opportunity to highlight the great stuff we have going on in the Port of Corpus Christi, but even more so, highlight our partnership and friendship with the Port of Corpus. You know, it's a luxury to have a port like this located here, and it's even more of a luxury to have the collaboration and the assistance and support from the port. It's been fantastic. Obviously, the Channel Improvement Project is a direct tie to some of the projects that we have acquired and announced over the last decade. It's helped underpin those investments. The one that I'll highlight the most, and I'll let Vince, who heads up all of our business development, get into more deeply. But a few years ago, we purchased what is now called our Ingleside Energy Center. And it is just that, it's an energy center. So it's all forms of energy, crude oil, ammonia, and more is we're siting there, positioning there for facilities and ultimately export. And it's strategically located on the port that gives us that access to that export, which makes it so unique. It's an exciting time for a lot of reasons. You mentioned energy dominance. I work in DC, so it seems like every other word I say is dominance, but energy dominance right now.
But don't forget golden era.
Golden era. There's a lot of those terms actually. I think we can do this all day. But it's exciting because there are tailwinds not just on the technologies, not just on the energy products, but also some of the policies that you have been working on for so long and championing. But simple things that are complicated, but simple concepts like permitting reform, trying to create some of that permitting predictability and dependability in terms of how long it's going to take. It feels like now we're at an opportunity, or we're at a point where we're feeling some of those tailwinds, and those are all critical to achieving the stated goal of this administration, which is energy dominance. But energy dominance, as we achieve that goal, that finds its way down to the Port of Corpus. We have a lot of crude oil storage. We're one of the largest, I forget, we're either one of the largest or the largest. It changes on a daily basis. But energy infrastructure companies in North America, we move north of 30% of all crude oil in North America and north of 20% of all natural gas in the United States. And so a lot of that crude oil, as we work to utilize existing infrastructure to seize upon what we think is going to be the increased domestic production from this new administration support, that's going to find its way down here, and it's a great position to be in. So I want to give Vince an opportunity to get into some more of the details and explain what we do, Vince.
Well, thank you, Devin, and thank you, Senator Cornyn and Mr. Chairman and Kent, for the invitation to be here. It's a pleasure. As Devin mentioned, we've got a lot going on down here. We bought the Ingleside Energy Center in 2021, and since that time, we've seen nothing but expansions. So when we bought that facility, we were moving just under 1 million barrels a day. Today, we've increased that. We're moving 30% more. We're averaging about 1.2 million barrels every day that we're exporting. A lot of that's the growth that's coming out of the Permian Basin. A lot of that's supported by the policies of the new administration. We expect to see more growth coming out of the basin. And a lot of that's going to hit, as Devin mentioned, we think this port, simply because it's the best advantage port today. It's got the Channel Improvement Project, which is in the process of wrapping up. And our ability to load 30% more onto the vessels is a direct outcome.
I was going to ask, it's 30% more on the
30%
vessel because of the widening and the deepening, the size of the vessel. Wow.
Yeah. So we used to be able to load about between 1.2 million barrels a day, barrels onto a VLCC. We can load between 1.5 and 1.6 onto that same vessel as a result of that channel improvement project. So it's paying off in spades in terms of what we're able to do on a daily basis. Last week, we actually hit a new record. We hit 2.6 million barrels in a single day that we loaded at our facility. That's probably 60% of what was moved out of the United States on that single day. So again, that's a direct relationship with the port. They are supporting us in terms of what we're trying to do. The partnership we have with the port has been second to none. It's enabled us to hit these new numbers, set these new records, and it seems like every month we're setting a new record in terms of throughput, so it's fantastic. Since we bought the facility, we've added another 4.5 million barrels of storage. We've expanded our pipeline system into the facility, and with growth in the basin, we expect to do more of that. So it's been absolutely fantastic. The partnership has been great. We look forward to energy dominance in the golden era because we think that brings more crude.
You did good to pick up those terms, right?
And I think that brings more crude to Corpus. We think that means we're going to be exporting more, and there's other facilities here as well that are going to benefit from that as well. So I think at the end of the day, it's a great partnership. Lots more growth to come, lots more opportunity, and it truly could be a golden era.
You do realize it's like the high jump. They raise the bar every time you clear one bar, they raise it again. So all these incredible records you're setting, that you're going to set even more. It's exciting.
You know, I know your time is limited, but what I was going to say is that if you ever have the opportunity to tour either the Enbridge or the Cheniere plant, it's just phenomenal in terms of what you see in the VLCCs, which is very large crude carrier.
Yeah,
they
big.
are very large. It's really something to see. Thank you. Was there anything else? That's good. Thank you. Great job.
Thank you.
Kyle.
Yeah, well,
Valero.
Yeah, just to I'll try not to repeat a bunch of things that these guys said, but thanks again, Senator, for being out here. It's a pleasure to get a chance to talk to you. A little bit about Valero. So we have two refineries here on the ship channel. We refine about 370,000 barrels a day. We also have another refinery that's just up the street in Three Rivers, Texas, and that's we have 7 refineries overall in the state of Texas. So we're a pretty large footprint in the state. And our headquarters is just up the road.
Still in San Antonio?
Yes, it sure is. So a little bit about us and how this ship channel has actually helped us out. So we're one of Enbridge's larger customers. We now export at least one ship a week or so goes up to Quebec. So we have one refinery in Canada, so we're talking about geopolitical impact. We're moving one ship a week up to there, and then we also tend to ship quite frequently to our Pembroke refinery all the way over in Wales, also supplying energy out to Europe like Cheniere. The other things that we do, so we've always exported quite a bit of material out of this up and down the river. Gasoline and diesel, a lot of it went to Florida and other places out of this area, but we are now shipping quite a bit of it to Mexico and South America as well. About half to about 2/3 of the gasoline and diesel that we make in this facility now goes to Mexico.
It's kind of a two-way street, isn't it? Because don't we import some Mexican crude, and then we export refined product.
Exactly.
There.
So
Okay.
Mexico struggles to run their refinery operations. They typically run about 60% utilization on the refinery assets. We run in the low 90s. And so they have the refining capacity that they need, but they can't run the refineries that they have. So we do import Mexican crude.
It's what happens when you have a government monopoly.
It's what happens when you have a government monopoly. It's usually best to leave us to run that stuff. But we do import Mexican crude. We have one whole crude train that runs predominantly Mexican crude. It's 100,000 barrels a day. But we do have 2 other trains that we run that are all West Texas sweet. So I think that kind of covers the bulk.
Yeah,
of
I can wrap it up
in
as far as, I think for all of us, it's about cost competitiveness. And so with the channel improvement project, it's definitely helped on that. We are able to load bigger ships and be much more effective at getting them out of the waterway. The two-way traffic without any kind of conflict is a huge safety benefit for us. And so we definitely appreciate the partnership with the Port of Corpus Christi, and we're glad to hear that this project is almost complete, because we've been talking about it for a long time.
Yes, we have. We appreciate everyone sticking with it.
Yeah, so it's been good to see, and I will say, I definitely do feel like the Port of Corpus Christi is in its golden era right now, because it's been, thanks to the new customers that have come online in the past few years, we've just seen a lot more traffic in the channel, which is a great thing for the Port of Corpus Christi. So many years to come, and it's nice to hear that records are being broken as well.
Mr. Chairman, would it be fair to say that sort of the two limiting factors to the growth of the port and these businesses is the access to the Corps of Engineers and permitting?
You know, so as we told you last week, you know, and as Kent mentioned earlier, you know, it took us a long time, 30 years, to get the deepening widening actually from the idea to fruition, which is where we're just months away.
Because the Corps has to do it.
The Corps is a big part. Funding is a big part. We actually have a very good relationship with the Corps right now.
Sure.
And the project that we talked to you about in DC last week in regards to permitting for the desal facility at Harbor Island going out to the Gulf for 100 million gallons per day, we got good news from the Corps in terms of their timeline. We even got better news yesterday.
Good.
It's just, so they're working very well with us. But what they need is they need funding, and they need the people, and they need permitting reform. You know, because there's a lot of entities that they have to connect with to be able to get us to the point where they can say, go ahead and do the project. That's the big issue. I know that this area, and as you mentioned earlier, you know, the state of Texas, we're out of water. The governor's made this an emergency item. The city is doing all they can do right now to from building a desal plant on the inner harbor to drilling wells along the Oasis River to find groundwater. We're trying to do everything they can. We need rain. But the plant at Harbor Island would basically not only potentially supplement what the city's doing in their jurisdiction, but also help the state. So it's a big project for the port. We're not going to own or operate the plant. We're just trying to facilitate it, get the permits so that someone can come in and do it. But the Corps plays a big part, and so we want to be supportive of the Corps as much as we can, but we need your help to make sure they've got what the tools they need to be successful.
Sure. I wasn't being critical, just to be clear.
Yeah.
They're just under a lot of demand.
Absolutely.
We got a lot of people trying to get their attention.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Which impacts our docks that we're trying to either build or improve. I know Valero's, you're changing your dock out to be able to take advantage of the 54 feet.
We are.
Where are you on that?
So, well, we're effectively going to be waiting on the core portion.
There you go.
Just kind of going back to what you were saying.
Yeah, it does cause a time component and an increase in cost. I think when we first talked about deepening and widening, we were talking about a $150 million project,
Right.
And it ballooned to over $600 million.
Well, of course, the longer these projects take, inflation kicks in, and we've seen certainly the last 4 years with the 40-year high inflation, everything's more expensive the longer it takes to do things.
Yes,
So
sir.
that's another factor.
Yes, sir. Anything y'all want to add to, you got the senator right here, I mean, now's the time.
Well, I might just add, while we're on the permitting reform piece of it, yes, the Corps of Engineers, then for us, it's DOE, FERC, PHMSA, and what we've seen, the last few years with scope creep from some of the federal agencies in terms of reviewing items that may not be congressionally directed out of their scope.
Are you saying they were making it up?
the agencies.
Pretty much, that's what I mean.
Yeah, the agencies
Go
are
ahead,
looking
Matt.
at things
They're
that
making
we
it up.
don't necessarily believe are in their scope to look at, but that adds time to
Right.
what we're trying to do. So a lot of it is working, PHMSA is our direct regulator when we're operations, but we're going through FERC and DOE on the front end.
Yeah, PHMSA is a direct regulator in operations, FERC in the construction phase, and they have a memorandum of understanding, but there's overlap. And also we have lots of discussions about what is incorporated, what is recommended practice versus reference, right? So, and when we apply for the permit to when we're actually doing construction, sometimes those things change and it can be very painful for us to get from idea to fruition.
Yeah. So the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA, I think a review of that and kind of what the agencies are congressionally authorized and directed to look at something we'll be talking with you and your team about.
Is litigation an issue?
Yes, that was actually on my list as well as judicial reform, and we're looking at having durable permits that are going to withstand a court process in which now a lot of those permits are being challenged and even up to vacatur from a court. So once you have a permit, having the potential to have it remanded, to have it vacated is an issue when it comes to certainty when we're looking at long-term contracts, construction contracts, financing. So the judicial reform and what avenues are available there is something that's very important to us in terms of looking at reforms on that front.
Okay.
You ever add anything to that?
Matt, I worked closely with Matt for a very long time, and he takes the words right out of my mouth. Everything he just said, ditto. It's the judicial reform, NEPA reform, Clean Water Act. These are things that are. It's a mix of they need reforms, they need codification, they need clarity that have long been on the table and have been worked on from a policy perspective. We were hopeful last Congress we might be able to make some headway. Ultimately, that didn't come through. We're hopeful this Congress that we can move forward. Certainly, some of the executive actions will help to provide some temporary tailwinds to some of those efforts. But ultimately, it really comes down to, and I always remind folks, we're here to talk about energy because that's what we do, but it's actually any and all industries that build and construct and permit anything, permitting reform touches them. And we're here talking about the Port of Corpus Christi, but one of the things that I think this group has done a good job of is, we, in a lot of ways, all roads, at least for us, I can say, all roads do lead back to the Port of Corpus. So as we're constructing projects around the country that are being slowed down, well, it slows down additional investments that we want to make down here as well. And it's almost always tied back to permitting. So permitting certainty and having that horizon as to when we can expect the turnaround. And that's a key point of this is no one's asking for necessarily, we're talking about having predictability and dependability on timelines within the permitting so that we know we can structure our investments, we can build out schedules that we have a high degree of confidence in so that we can make good on our commitments, and that's really what we're talking about.
Just to build on what Devin just said, I think it's just in industry in general, the projects that we're looking at are not small projects typically. They're large infrastructure projects. Some of them are worth billions and billions of dollars. And we really do need certainty in order to invest those dollars, make sure we're going to get the return that our shareholders and everybody else is expecting as they're investing in our respective companies. And it's a big deal when we have permits that are delayed or challenges to those permits once they've been granted that just delays the project. It adds uncertainty to the investment, and it makes it more difficult for companies like all of us here to make those investment decisions when we don't know what the outcome is going to be. So certainty around the permitting process, certainty around the litigation, the judicial process is very helpful for us as we're looking at these types of projects.
Sorry to interrupt, but we'll have to wrap up in here so the senator can head outside.
Okay.
And then we'll reconvene
Great.
downstairs in the lobby.
I was waiting for you to interrupt.
I would just invite all of you, as we've done with the port, to bring us your ideas and concerns, and let us try to figure out how we can move the ball down the field. Well, good morning. Good to be back in Corpus Christi here at the port and learn about the exciting things that are happening here. I was spent yesterday at in Midland and Odessa, the Permian Basin, where a lot of the oil comes out of the ground that eventually makes its way here. But I think what people don't necessarily understand is energy production not only affects consumers at the price of the pump they pay at the pump, but everything depends on energy. And that's going to get to be more and more of an issue with the advent of artificial intelligence and data centers. Some of the projections for energy needs and electricity in particular, but electricity isn't magically produced. It has to come from somewhere else, like the energy that's produced here and supplied here. The increase in demand is going to continue to go up and up and up. And those data centers, if they can't be built here in America because we don't have adequate affordable energy, they're going to be built somewhere else. and that presents a whole host of other challenges as well. But the United States, we know, is the world's largest energy producer. It wasn't that long ago when we were dependent on foreign sources of oil and gas. And there's no coincidence that over the years, presidents have identified the Middle East, and particularly some of the transit routes like the Strait of Hormuz, as being critical to America's national security, not just our economy. I remember Jimmy Carter, back when he was president, said that if anybody were to block the Strait of Hormuz, that's where the vast majority of oil and gas would flow that made its way to the United States, where we were importing it at the time. He said that would be an act of war. So this is serious stuff. And of course, we've seen with the invasion of Ukraine, Europe has awakened to the fact they became too dependent on a single source of energy, and that's from Russia. And Russia was using it as a weapon. So this not only affects what's happening here in Corpus Christi, which is very exciting, and how this dovetails into what's happening across the state of Texas as the world's premier energy producer. But none of this would be possible without the Port of Corpus Christi. So I'm very excited to hear about the channel improvement project, what that will mean in terms of greater efficiency for some of the companies that are the customers of the port, up to 30% savings in efficiency because of these larger vessels. And I want to thank Chairman Engel and Brett and others for their leadership, and of course all the port commissioners here who have been essential in making the necessary investments and correct strategic decisions to make Corpus Christi be the leading export facility in the United States. And that doesn't happen by accident. And I want to also express my gratitude to Cheniere, Valero, and Enbridge for participating in today's program. And it's important for me as a policymaker to understand what their issues are and how we can help hopefully smooth the road to them improving their efficiency and doing what they already do well, doing it even better. But finally, as I alluded a moment ago when talking about Russia and Europe, energy is national security. And President Trump understands that. He's talked about the new era of energy dominance. He understands that if you take your boot off the neck of the people who produce and transport the energy to customers around the world, that's good for the American economy, but it's also good for our national security as well. So again, this is not just about a local story. This is not just about the state of Texas. This is literally about the global interconnection, a lot of which happens and starts right here in Corpus Christi. So I want to thank Chairman Engel and the port commissioners and everybody here for leading the way, not only for the nation, but also the world when it comes to affordable energy. So with that, I'm happy to answer or dodge a couple of questions. Yes, sir.
You talked about, well, all these folks talked about some funding
Yeah.
down the line for the Port of Corpus Christi. How much of a priority is it for you when you get back to Washington to investigate that?
Well, certainly that's going to be an important element. I'd say funding, as Chairman Engel said, funding the Corps of Engineers. They do a fabulous job, but everybody wants a piece of them and wants it now. And so they have these projects kind of stack up, and it's hard to get to the top of that list. So you've heard about the delays that have occurred as a result of permitting problems, funding, and actually just capacity issues for the Corps of Engineers. So those are some of the issues I'm going to take back with me. But there's also been a lot of delays associated with litigation, lawsuits. Once somebody like one of these companies here, like Cheniere, Valero, and Enbridge, get a permit, they ought to be able to do what's been approved after a lengthy review process and not subjected to endless litigation, which delays those projects even longer. And as we know, the longer the delays are, the more expensive things become and less affordable. So funding is always an issue. There's never enough. but certainly I'll be able to take what I've learned here today back with me and try to express that to the right people who write the checks.
Can you talk a little bit about desal and the
Yeah.
importance of it?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. As we also discussed, water is the top of Governor Abbott's agenda for the legislative session. You know, one of the challenges is Texas is growing by about 1,600 people a day. We now have 31 million people and growing. And of course, once land is developed, that puts a stress on natural resources like water. And of course, the more companies come in, they use it for industrial purposes and the like. And so we've got to come up with some different ideas. Part of that has to do with what we've already talked about in terms of permitting. It takes too long to build a reservoir, that's just a problem across the board. We don't build things fast enough in America. None of our competitors around the world seem to have these same problems, but that's really something we have to get through. But Israel is very successful in sort of the cutting edge on desalination, and I'm looking forward to being able to visit Israel at some point here in the near future to learn more about how they operate. But I know what the chairman talked about here in Corpus at the city and the port level on the desal project is something I'm very supportive of. What I'd like to try to figure out is how I can help make that happen faster. And I know it's a collaboration between the various stakeholders here at the local level, but I want to figure out what I can do at the federal level to complement their actions, and then also to try to figure out how can we get more water available, not just for Corpus Christi, but for the region and for the state. I think it's absolutely critical.
Will you comment on the topic of energy independence and how the ship improvement project will contribute to that?
Yeah, you know, we've had, of course, I know, it's been a few years. I'm old enough to remember when our dependence on foreign sources was a major issue. And there's no secret why we've been engaged in a lot of conflicts in the Middle East, where that's been such an important source of oil for the United States and energy. And so what it does when we produce more of it here in America, and we're literally now able to not just import it, but to export it, it changes that dynamic dramatically. And so, you can talk about energy independence. President Trump talks about energy dominance. I like that concept, and I'm hopeful that with the right policies in place, some of which we've talked about here today, we can do more. And this is, again, not just about creating good, well-paying jobs here in Corpus Christi and in this region, but literally about lowering costs for consumers across the state and across the country, and also making it possible for our friends and allies not to have to depend on authoritarian countries like Russia, for example, for their energy supply, because they use it as a weapon, as we've seen in the recent past. Anybody else? Well, thank you all very much. Appreciate you coming out.
Senator, thank you for being here.
You bet.
Really appreciate it.
It's a
Thank you.
pleasure.